I mean, I'll be honest, like, it makes me so uncomfortable that it actually makes me angry.
Boom, boom, boom.
How can I really understand what it's like to take your clothes off in front of a camera without doing it myself?
This is so gross.
If somehow this got out and people were able to figure out it was me, I would still be proud of myself for doing it.
Did I just make a terrible mistake? Hi, I'm Merle. I think of myself as a pretty open-minded person. Over the last year or so, I've been trying to dive into the depths of my own sexuality. And it's been very rewarding, but it hasn't always been easy. It's like hard to breathe. You just gotta feel it. I've made a lot of progress in breaking through some of my hardwired sexual shame. But there's still one thing that has always really bothered me. It just seems gross to me. I mean, I'll be honest, like, it makes me so uncomfortable that it actually makes me angry. I hate porn. Ever since I stumbled upon it when I was 12 years old, my cousin and I typed in girls.com. Needless to say, it was not what we were expecting. I was terrified. Ever since, my opinions on it haven't really changed. When someone I'm dating watches porn, it makes me feel insecure and jealous, almost like it's some kind of a betrayal. But now that I'm exploring my own sexuality, I figure it's time to take a clean look at porn for what it really is and find out once and for all, should I hate porn? To gain better insight, I talked to the two people who know me most intimately, my boyfriend Arya and my sex therapist, Dr. Shannon Chavez.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited that you're taking on kind of this exploration because, you know, for someone that's so sex positive, I always found it a little odd that, you know, you had such a negative view on this form of sex work. I would say the adult industry ranks up there amongst the most marginalized communities. That's an industry that is viewed with a lot of disdain from a lot of people, despite the fact that the majority of the planet consumes the content made by the porn industry.
Knowing you, I do see porn being something you can feel uncomfortable with, especially since there's a lot of shame and discomfort around what pornography represents, and there's a lot of variety out there to look at, so I do feel that can be overcome with more exposure to good ethical porn.
The natural next step for me feels like to watch some porn, because it's been probably 5, 6, 7 years. Maybe it won't bother me at all. Oh, I just opened the page and someone put a finger in their butthole. Oh, maybe there's like beginners porn? Oh my God, is there like porn for beginners? Oh, I wasn't ready for that. What? I haven't even picked a porn yet. This is the home page. Clearly, my feelings have not changed. I think one of the reasons that I've had this whole issue around porn is because I feel like I've had sex with people that learned how to have sex from porn. And it felt very aggressive and very almost violent because they assumed that's what I wanted. If I search something like forced, there are a lot of really unsettling keywords that continue to pop up. That is the thing I have in my mind that makes me hate porn, is I feel like there's a lot of people getting taken advantage of. It was all too easy for me to find people that agreed with me that porn was, well, bad.
So studies show that anywhere between 40 and 88% of porn is aggressive. One of those studies revealed that 94% of the aggression is targeted at women. And 95% of the time, the woman responds with a neutral or pleasurable response.
Hearing about the high percentages of violent and aggressive behavior in porn just makes me more angry and reminds me why I've always hated it so much.
There is zero data and zero research that points to any kind of causation and causality between violent acts in porn and violent acts in real life. In the same way, by the way, that there is zero correlation between playing violent video games and being violent in real life.
You know, as far as porn use, statistically, most of the studies have shown that about 75% of users are male, but I do feel that those numbers can be inaccurate because a lot of people may feel shame reporting their pornography use.
After doing a little digging, I uncovered Pornhub's 2019 insights. Some of women's top search terms included gangbang and hardcore. I even found a 2008 article by the Journal of Sex Research, which estimated that 31 to 57% of women have had fantasies of sex against their will. This, of course, doesn't mean they actually want that to happen to them in real life. I don't think I've ever fully grasped the idea of porn as fantasy until seeing this. Another issue I've heard in a lot of people's arguments against porn is porn addiction. And I mean, that has to be real because people like go to rehab and everything for that, right?
Porn addiction has been thrown around a lot in our culture, and the truth is it doesn't really exist.
What?
Porn, like anything else, can claim our consciousness. And what that means is anything we do excessively can affect our brain, our functioning, our mood, our mental health. So it's not necessarily an addiction, but it can become an impulsive or compulsive behavior, especially if people are using pornography to cope with underlying issues like depression, anxiety, early trauma, sexual abuse. So it's important to assess it and to work with it gently because sometimes there's a lot of distress connected to porn use. It's not always pleasurable for people.
I mean, there are a lot of things that can become compulsory. Working out, lying, eating, hoarding, cleaning, gambling, itching, counting. You get the picture, like almost anything. I was just under the impression that porn was evil and porn was like a drug to the brain and it was destroying the way people loved other people.
So I regularly get called up by journalists going, Cindy, do you feel that porn objectifies women? And my response is, porn, like every other area in popular culture, is dominated at the top by a closed loop of white guys talking to white guys about other white guys. And when that happens in every single industry, what we get is male lens output that unfortunately is modeling the wrong societal norms for the whole of humanity.
Anti-porn campaigners figured out about 20 years ago that trying to attack porn on obscenity grounds wasn't a winning political strategy. And so they shifted their terrain to concerns about trafficking. It's a perspective that is almost entirely focused on what porn means for everyone except sex workers. Child porn is real, but it is not created by professional pornographers. It's created by abusers who are overwhelmingly men in the victim's own family. Trafficking is very uncommon in porn. Human trafficking is most common in industries like agriculture. So if you're concerned about how your consumption habits might be playing into trafficking, there are much more mundane, everyday industries that you should be looking at rather than just porn.
The industries with the highest risk of human trafficking around the world include agriculture, construction, electronics manufacturing, mining, fishing, forestry, hospitality, housekeeping and janitorial services, textile and apparel manufacturing, transportation, and warehousing. Porn isn't even on the list. The only thing that sets porn apart from all these industries that are doing the same, if not worse, things to our society and people is sex. Why are we so weird about sex?
3 reasons. Number 1, centuries of repression, religion, socio-cultural dynamics in every single country in the world. This is a global issue. Number 2, the patriarchy, because historically every single institution, including government and religion, has been male dominated. We as women have never been allowed to bring our lens to bear on human sexuality, and the world is a poorer place for it. And reason number 3, very straightforwardly, is there are not enough people like me. And what I mean by that is the world makes it extraordinarily difficult to innovate and disrupt social narratives around sex. We need many more people like me who will not give up no matter what.
I do feel anti-porn activism is dangerous because it's not showing people the full big picture. I think it focuses on the porn that is unethical or violent or shows, stereotypical misogynistic behavior towards women. But that's definitely just a sliver of what porn is all about. There's so much out there. So I do hope that people exposing themselves to different material helps break down some of those negative messages.
When you force an entire industry into the shadows and underground, you make it a lot easier for bad things to happen, and you make it very difficult for good things to happen.
I don't generally think of myself as someone who consumes and spreads misinformation, how could I claim to be pro-equality, pro-sex work, pro-feminism, and conveniently leave out this whole group of people? That just speaks volumes to how insecure and uncomfortable I am with sex itself. I'm realizing that I've never even had the experience of speaking to someone who works or has worked in the porn industry. And that's a problem. That's a huge perspective that is missing from this narrative. So I decided to sit down with Lupe Fuentes.
To me, what I do is I am a creative. The fact that my creation happened to be sexual in nature is great. When I started, the porn business was completely different. Everything was very much controlled by company owners and agents, which were men. And it was a lot of exploitation, for sure. I have also learned a lot from all of this. Without all of this experience, I will not be the person that I am today. And I really love myself, and I'm really proud of who I am. So I went trade it for the world. I have an OnlyFans, and I only create my own content. I feel super empowered by my work. I love it. I enjoy creating it because to me, it's not just about the sex, right? I love creating aesthetic to it and creating kind of like a world for people to come in and indulge in beauty and pleasure. Everything has gone online, which is, to me, I think is way better, especially for the talent. For you to have control over your own decisions, for you to have control over what's happening and what you're shooting and how you're being portrayed, is super important.
I am willing to admit that many of my arguments against porn have been unfounded. One thing I know to be true is how I feel when my partner watches porn. And the easiest way to put it is, I feel jealous.
I can understand feeling insecure when you are seeing the person you love or the person that you feel protected enjoying somebody else's body, even if it's just like visually. I understand that, but I think that comes more from my own self, and the things that I think and I believe about myself than about whatever thing he's watching or not watching.
I never viewed it as much of a concern because I knew for a fact in my mind that I wasn't planning on running off with any of these performers. I saw porn just as porn and just that. There was no emotional attachment happening. But I can see how as someone who doesn't watch porn at all, could have those insecurities, could have those fears. And so again, I think the important thing about this whole conversation is the fact that your feelings are valid. And I'm hoping that through this exploration, maybe you'll come to a middle ground.
I don't think you have to disclose your porn habits to everyone. That's a personal choice, but it actually can help you feel more empowered around your sexuality and break the shame down, and it normalizes the behavior. If people talked about it openly like a conversation, we wouldn't feel so much shame around it.
Our parents bring us up to have good manners, work ethic, sense of responsibility, accountability. Nobody ever brings us up to behave well in bed, but they should, because in bed, values like empathy, sensitivity, generosity, kindness, honesty, respect are as important as those values are in every other area of our lives where we're actively taught to exercise them.
Porn is not the problem. Porn gets a bad rap. Honestly, it's a lack of sex education. If we're not talking about sexuality and that's your only access to information, it's gonna set up a mindset and a view and perspective on sexuality as a whole that may not be realistic.
I, for one, did have sex ed when I was growing up in Asia. When you're growing up, you're watching porn, and so when you eventually have sex, at least in my case, you kind of, borrow from what you've seen. I can look back at previous relationships where I wonder, was that actually, fun for either of us, honestly.
Pornography is fantasy-driven. It's not real sex. It can lead to shame about your own body and genital shame by showing unrealistic body ideals. It can be very performance-focused, which means that it shows the mechanics of sexuality and it leaves out a lot of the good stuff: intimacy, negotiation and compromise, communication, foreplay, female pleasure. So it can and only does occasionally show a glimpse of what real sex is like.
You know what's really interesting is that I didn't have porn to influence me in sex, and I have a lot of issues around sexuality.
That's true.
So we can't necessarily say watching a lot of porn is gonna lead to you having less than authentic sex.
You don't want to go in there all by yourself, do you?
Heterosexuality has conditioned people to have bad sex for a long time, for much longer than people have been able to watch porn at home or even in a theater.
You ask me and you dislike me a little, huh?
Throughout history, we have taught men that sexuality is for them.
I wish society understood the opposite of what it thinks is true. Women enjoy sex just as much as men, and men are just as romantic as women. Yet neither gender is allowed to openly celebrate that fact, and we'd all be a lot better off if they were.
What is it about heterosexual dynamics and gender dynamics that teach straight men not to pay attention to their partner's needs, and that often teach straight women that it's not safe to voice their own needs, or even on their own terms to masturbate and explore in ways that help them figure out what it is they want?
The day we have a porn industry that is 50-50 equally led, influenced, managed, and driven by women just as much as by men, is the day we have porn and a porn industry that looks completely different. More innovative, more creative, more disruptive, way more lucrative, and again, the same is true of every other industry. Hollywood, TV, advertising, publishing, journalism.
I think it's safe to say that I've judged porn a little prematurely, basing all of my opinions on mainstream hardcore pornography, which is basically akin to judging all movies off of mainstream blockbuster action movies, which I hate.
If you go straight to Pornhub, you're gonna see some very specific fantasies that might actually create repulsion and disgust. I recommend you start getting acquainted with pornography by starting slow, looking at some images, audio erotica, and something that turns you on that allows you to use your sexual imagination.
I'm realizing now that I've never actually seen real sex, because even if I'm watching porn, it's still performance-based.
Make Love Not Porn does not compete with porn. We are the badly missing counterpoint and complement to porn. The world's first and only user-generated, human-curated, social sex video sharing platform. If porn is the Hollywood blockbuster movie, Make Love Not Porn is the real-world documentary. Social sex is enormously reassuring on Make Love Not Porn because we celebrate real-world everything. Real-world bodies, real-world hair, real-world penis size, real-world breast size, real-world labia. You can submit a video anonymously. You can have it up for as long as you want to have it up. The moment you want it down, we take it down again. We have a ton of solo Make Love Not Porn stars. Men, women, trans, non-binary individuals who have filmed themselves masturbating, engaging in this incredibly intimate act, and then shared it on our platform for complete strangers to watch. The vast majority of our Make Love Not Porn stars have never ever filmed themselves doing anything sexual before ever. They are doing it for us because they believe in our social mission. They too want to see more open, honest dialogue around sex.
Clearly, I've spent a lot of time judging people's personal habits and porn use. So I think it's time for me to contribute something to the conversation. If nothing else, as an educational tool to kind of move the culture forward. How can I really understand what it's like to take your clothes off in front of a camera without doing it myself?
The answer to everything that worries people about porn and about sex generally is not to shut down, but to open up.
I was actually even considering uploading something to Make Love Not Porn. I mean, honestly, genital shame is the biggest thing for me. And would you recommend using Make Love Not Porn as a way to kind of build your own confidence up in your sexuality?
Oh my God, Mel, absolutely, because that is what we exist to do.
If I had watched real sex and real bodies 15 years ago, I would have saved myself a lot of shame and fear and anxiety around sex. All I can hope from this video is that somebody will see a bit of themselves in it and then maybe feel more empowered and beautiful.
We have been taught, especially women, we should be ashamed of our sexuality. And if we like sex and it feels good to us, we should be ashamed and not tell anybody.
I watched the video back to myself. I really struggle to see this as something anybody would want to watch.
That is dirty, that is something wrong. It couldn't be farther from the truth. Sex is beautiful, and women are beautiful.
If we saw more people post their bodies as they actually look, less people would feel this fear that I'm feeling right in this moment.
And yes, you can learn to love sex, because I feel like that idea of having negative thoughts about your own sexuality, of your own body, that has been learned. So the same way you can learn to love your body and to be in the present moment with yourself and feel your feelings, feel good.
If somehow this got out and people were able to figure out it was me, I would still be proud of myself for doing it.
I think sexuality and loving yourself go very hand in hand. To accept your body, to accept who you are, the person that you were born as, you just gotta wake up to it.
Many, many things that make you feel uncomfortable, nervous, challenged are huge signs of growth. And I'm feeling all of those things at the moment, but I know I'm doing it for the right reasons, and I trust myself.
Bring it out into the sunlight, and you can completely change the face of not only the adult industry, but of human sexuality.
I can't tell you whether or not you should watch porn. All I can tell you is to do some deep diving, speak to yourself, look deeply at why you feel the way you feel. If we're not being given the sex education that we deserve, we have a responsibility to teach ourselves and each other. And that starts with courage.